So we're going to do a little exercise that we've done with Kip before. Kip is not speaking in the third person like a crazy person or like a person that normally does that, because he does not. If you think this is a crazy person, it's understandable, but Kip is simply allowing us to speak through him because he can shut his mouth and not let us speak this way. But we're cowards, but we did something interesting with him several times, and he would like it to be on record in a way like we started to do in one of his last videos that he has not posted yet, but that he will. He wants it to be less scatterbrained. So Carrie Lacrone, Kip's father. Kip is not crazy on any drugs right now, and he is not choosing the words that are coming out of his mouth. Voice-to-skull technology is real, as you very well know, and by telling him it is not real, you are doing him a disservice. I think you know that he's telling the truth to some extent, because Voice-to-Skull is very well documented on Wikipedia, and you can follow the links to the studies on it. You can also look in the links. You can also look in the in academia articles. It is a very well documented thing, and it is real. Magicians and mentalists use it to pretend to pick numbers from people's brains, or in the simple guess the number trick, or to use those numbers in a more elaborate trick, like they did on America's Got Talent when they had Tyra punch numbers into a calculator on her phone, and those numbers were transmitted via Voice-to-Skull. It can also be used to control the words coming out of people's mouths, or to manipulate them to be high success rate, so that most of the words coming out of their mouths are not words that they chose. Because, as Gibb stated, there are studies, which he has links, and he'll provide those. He'll provide links to those that show that when you think in explicit language, or in languages that you're fluent in, or when you think in those, you're essentially almost saying those words, because those words have not left your mouth entirely, or you haven't said them, or you've whispered them, or you've almost whispered them, but not quite. The signals that go to your vocal cords, there's two, and there's actually some patents on those that they're trying to. There's one patent on the one that Google's doing, and someone else is doing, to try to distinguish, or to try to figure out if they can use that for people that have lost the capability of speech. There's a third signal that goes through your skull, the bones in the skull, and can be read by bone conduction microphones. This is a real product, Carrie, and you can look it up on the market. It's used to record non-vocalized speech, otherwise known as covert speech, otherwise known as imagined thought or imagined speech. And it is a real product that's been in the market for a few years. So there are microphones that can sit in the back of your ears, that sit in the back of this bone here, your jawbone, or the skull right here and here, that now, and they're not bone conducting headphones, they're bone conductive microphones, and they do work. And the reason why I'm saying that, Carrie, because Kip has stated this many times to people, and it's actually really cool, the science, that he connected the dots in science on this. And we didn't really help him on that too much. We just watched him and we were like, wow, he's correct. And what a smart guy he is. And his father doesn't even believe him, or doesn't let him know that he believes him. And the reason why I'm telling you this, Carrie, about the bone conducting microphones and the signals like that, is because that is a real product. The reason why is I'm linking the dots for you. VoiceToSkull is a real technology. It can be used to transmit audio via microwaves, which is why normal recording equipment does not pick it up to another human's skull, really via their ears to the ear bones, but that goes to their skull. That's been the technology of VoiceToSkull has been around for over 60 years. The ability for it to transmit voice has been around for over 50 years. It took them 10 years to be able to transmit audible voice. And the reason why I say that is because they're really recreating or mimicking the voice of that. It's been perfected even further for music, for anything. They've gotten quite well at that. And magicians, mentalists do use that. To use it in tricks for basically guessing numbers to be used in the trick, or words or phrases or things like that. Because it can be used at a subliminal level of volume. It can be the person you can use it. You can it can be you can control the volume of it with our equipment and with other equipment that magicians and mentalists use. And if you turn it down to a subliminal level, it's still transmitting. It's still transmitting it, so it's like you're transmitting data. And it's almost people don't know that it's not their own thoughts that just randomly pops up in their brain when they're trying to think of a number or think of something to just to ponder on. We do all of those, and it is being done to you as well. It is being done to you so that you do not believe your son. It was done to you when you were speaking to your son the day after Thanksgiving, 2016, when Kip was just returning from being refused from Chris's house that he used to have with Kip. And he went to the neighbors for a little bit, and then he left on foot and walked to that intersection right by the Hampton Inn. At the very moment you mentioned the Hampton Inn and visiting Chris, he looked up and he saw the Hampton Inn sign right when you were talking about the Hampton Inn and getting coffee there one time. He did not think that was really you at that time. He knew something was fucked up about that, and that's why he hung up on you and chose to continue to wonder what he was going to do and continue walking around town trying to figure it out. It's very important that you think about that, Gary, because that's why he was trying to ask you questions to know that was you, because the audio was being fucked with. It didn't sound like you. You couldn't think of the guy's name, Gay Seaman. Also, because you're being fucked with unbeknownst to you, and you were being manipulated to think about that story with the Hampton Inn at that very moment. He didn't know that at the time, but he knew that was not a coincidence. That could not be a coincidence. There's no way in the world that anyone would think that was a mere coincidence. That you mentioned visiting him and Chris when he had come from there 30 minutes earlier, and being turned away by Chris, and then he went to the neighbor's 2 doors down that he used to know. And it is not a mere coincidence that the moment you mentioned going to get coffee, to walking to go get coffee at the Hampton Inn, and he had walked almost the same path and saw the Hampton Inn sign when he looked up at the intersection, just half a block down the road. At the moment that you said that is not a mere coincidence. No way in the world is that a coincidence. And that is one of many things that have happened to Kip that he's experienced, some of which he has told you, all of which you have chosen not to listen to and not to soak in, because we're using the VoiceToSkull, or another team is using the VoiceToSkull to distract you, to make you more aggravated, to make you not care as much, to make you more frustrated at Kip that he's not getting better. He's 100% sober and sane. And of course, it doesn't seem like that when you're looking at a video, listening to someone talk out of his mouth, and obviously not believing it. But it sounds pretty sober and sane to me. I sound pretty sober and sane. And the additional thing I want to tell you is that with VoiceToSkull, or with the natural phenomenon about when you think in explicit sentences and whatever language you're fluent in, and I told you there's those microphones that can pick that up, that have been around on the consumer market, and how they're studying like two different signals that go down here. They're studying, and they're barely making progress on that and able to detect, like one word over another when there's only a choice of two words, not when it's just trying to detect, out of all words, what those words are. It's very early infancy in those things. But the other thing that science has discovered is that when you listen to other people, you obviously are probably, if you're truly listening to them, you're hearing them, and then you're also thinking basically what they're saying, or you're not necessarily agreeing with it, but what I mean by that is when you hear someone say, like, the quick red fox jumped over the brown lazy dog, you pretty much think that sentence as if you thought it yourself, if you're really listening closely to them, or listening to them, or pieces of it. You can understand this phenomenon very easily if you think about when you hear a speaker on TV or in person, and they have to clear their throat, or it's just someone that you're talking to one-on-one, and they have a frog in their throat, or they have to clear their throat, and then suddenly you feel like you have to clear your throat. And that's something that a lot of people have experienced and didn't really think much of it. Kind of like, when someone yawns and someone else yawns. That's that phenomenon, because that's your brain hearing the clearing of the throat. And just like with the English sentences, or whatever language you're fluent in, that signals still go through the bone, and the two go down here. And that's why you have to clear your throat too a lot of the times. It's sort of forming that. And it's for that reason that with VoiceToSkull, you can quickly and easily cause the words to come out of people's mouths in the same manner that you're saying them. It's incredibly crazy sounding, but it's all scientific. And I just connected the dots for you, that Kip was able to connect like that when he read some articles on this. And he was like, wow, that's like, that's incredible. And then he didn't even hear about the throat thing, and he was like, that's the throat thing. And someone has to clear the throat, and then you'd feel like you feel like you have to clear your throat too, even though you're just listening to them. It's the same thing. It's kind of like a telepathy thing, but not really. It's because of that thing of when you think in sound, there's two signals that go down there, and then the one through the bones, to ready to say that, because there's not much different in you thinking it and then whispering it or saying it. There's just like pressure, there's just air, there's just the choice to allow that thought to come out of your mouth, whether or not you're talking to yourself or talking to someone else. So the signals of when you're thinking it If you already know how to speak, those signals are already going to go down there anyway. Because if you're thinking it and you already know how to form those sentences, the effort to say that is just it's sort of, I don't know how to explain it any further than that. I hope I haven't convoluted it. But those are real, and everything I've told you is true. You can look it up yourself, and we'll put the links to the thing, we'll put the links in the description in this, and he'll send you an email probably, or draft it. Like, he's drafted so many things to you and hasn't sent them to you. But the reason why I'm telling you that is because it's all true, and it's all based on the fact that once you learn how to speak or communicate, whether or not you think of the communication that you would like to convey to someone else or just ponder on by yourself, those signals go through your bone, through the bones, and to go down here, ready to vocalize that. Because when you learn to communicate that way and you think that way in your communication to yourself, for expressed thought, or unvocalized speech. And I don't mean like when you're just walking, or when you're just reacting like you wash your hands. You don't typically think, I need to wash my hands. I mean, sometimes you do if you catch yourself, but if it's just, a lot of the things that you do are just routine, or, you just know how to do them. Those don't typically come out in communications, or in a communication that would go down here, or, through here. But when you ponder on things, or you think about things that you might say out loud to yourself or to someone else, or when you hear someone, you can't help but think those words, because those words are being said into your ear and you're hearing them, so you have to comprehend them as communication. So it's no different than you really saying it to yourself, essentially. So if you think the quick red fox and someone says to you, the quick red fox, you have to think those words. And so that's why there's really no difference between hearing that and then thinking those words. Those words are still being communicated. You're still having to, and sometimes you might even repeat them to yourself in your head after they say them, or parts of them. You have to think on it, and you're kind of repeating it to yourself in your head, perhaps. And that would be no different than you thinking them originally from your brain yourself, you see. So because of that throat clearing thing that I hope you have experienced yourself, I hope you will know how we are doing this to Kip right now, through Kip right now. And obviously, you think if we were really helping him, you would just come in person then and do this exercise. But we're cowards and we're not going to do that. So if you think about it, we're kind of trying to fuck him over by giving him the confidence that when we do these types of things, and he posts them anyway, saying like, surely my dad will know that this is not me, or even if it is me, maybe he'll do another video where he's saying this himself. But I don't think this is the best way of communicating all that. It was very slow and took 20 minutes to explain something to you. So, and it probably wasn't in the best way possible. And you probably think that this just kept going crazy off his psych meds and what we also didn't say is that when you do that, when we do this, you can kind of communicate, you can change the sound of his voice too. Like, he's done some things on here that you may or may not have seen, where he's not really crazy. Because we can go up here and change the voice just like that. I didn't change, I shouldn't say that. Kip didn't choose to do this voice. Kip didn't choose to do this voice either. So, you're like, well, how do they do the thing? Well, because the additional toys that we have, we can make that a little bit easier, but you also are sort of trained to know when you communicate like that, it sounds different. So you already kind of have a heads up when we do it one